Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of Journey Coaching.
We're super passionate about all things coaching and want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training over 1,000 life coaches.
Dive deep into a more meaningful career, find freedom, and make an impact on the world around you.
On today's episode, Noelle and I are going to tackle one of the most common questions and also one of the most important questions when it comes to coaching, and that is what coaching is and what coaching is not. Noelle. Good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. I'm really excited about this topic for a couple different reasons, but most of all, it was so fun to prepare that I'm really excited about it.
Well, in preparation, you probably got reminded, you probably learned a few things that are new and different, gave you a new perspective, and hence the excitement.
Yes, yes. And where that came from is, the same old stuff. When we hear, what is coaching and what it is not, it's usually comparative to other disciplines.
Right.
That coaching's not therapy, it's not mentoring, and it's not consulting. And even when you get into the actionable skill sets for coaching, to the unpracticed eye, or for someone who might be starting out in this field or who wants to bring coaching into where they work or into their relationships, it's really hard to differentiate what exactly you need to do, both internally and externally, to show up as a coach. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And I find that this topic brings up emotion, usually frustration and anger in people, because I think a lot of people think they know what coaching is. And then when they realize that may not be it, there's this kind of falling off a cliff, expectations not met, disappointment, frustration, all of that. So it's an important topic.
It is. And I was just having a conversation earlier today, and we were talking about the way that this shows up in large organizations. And, I think the number one thing that people mistake this for when they're in coworker or employer employee relationships is that giving someone direct feedback is not coaching.
Right. Direct feedback, advice, how things should be, what you need to do, all that stuff. Right.
So let's get into it. One of the most common things, and so we're, really taking this into the workplace or into your home life, is what coaching is helping everyone around you build enthusiasm and motivation.
Mm, yeah, and the word motivation is a little tricky. I love the word hope. I love the phrase injecting hope, which then creates motivation, of course.
Yes, absolutely. So, let's look at what the opposite of that is, or what some common behaviors are that folks might use to try to band aid that situation. And the way it shows up is, monitoring other people in whatever way,
Yeah,
whether it's your partner or whether you're at work or whether it's even your friend group. It's looking over somebody's shoulder, looking at somebody else's behavior and saying, you're doing it wrong.
right, right. It's also posturing, right? Because with that comes this kind of offset that that you're better, that you're wiser, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that folks feel like they have kind of a responsibility to do that, or it comes from a place of care and concern. I see this happen obviously at work. It happens because folks feel compelled to micromanage when they get tense or lose trust or are afraid that something's not going well. But I see it show up in family systems too, where parents micromanage kids and
Oh
don't
yeah,
give them,
yeah,
the opportunity to discover for themselves, or, even in intimate relationships where, one partner might be struggling with something and the other one starts hovering.
right, right. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, absolutely. With my clients in relationships feeling controlled, even if it's subtle, feeling claustrophobic, this just not feeling free.
And then, the space that I think deserves a ton of attention, that falls under chosen family is really close-knit friend groups,
Mhm.
where the friend group will decide, "Oh, so and so sucks at dating,"
Right.
or, "So and so always does this." And the friend group will actually try to micromanage the behavior of one of the members.
Yeah, yeah, and usually it's coming from their own, anxiety.
Their own anxiety or intention to genuinely help that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we do here and how we actually use the coaching skill to build enthusiasm and motivation. And it might be a little bit surprising to you because it has nothing to do with the other person. It's really internal.
Mm.
In in order to avoid looking over somebody else's shoulder, you actually have to start building internal muscle to stay in your own container and to occupy a space of non judgment. And step one of developing motivating enthusiasm and infusing hope as a practice is to first put your own oxygen mask on and get used to letting others step up to the plate in their own way without attachment to outcome.
You know what this reminds me of? You know, when you're growing up and you're getting a lot of finger pointing and what you need to do, and you need to get A's, all the stuff from parents, obviously, and also maybe from teachers. But there's that one person, maybe it's your crazy uncle, that one adult that treats you like an adult or allows you to be you instead of telling you what to do, and that person really stands out because everyone else is telling you what to do when you're growing up as a kid, and that person ends up being like your favorite person. So whether it's like
Oh,
your baseball coach or your uncle or your your homeroom teacher or whoever, and what's amazing is that person's kind of hands off, let me support your journey, champion your story, and kind of hold the space. That's what's so powerful when everyone else is telling you what to do, and this reminds me of that.
yeah. Who was that for you?
I had a few, but it was, a crazy uncle, who, let me, be me and, say a little bit past the curfew and do some things and maybe some things he shouldn't have let me do, but it was that person, that made me realize, "Oh, like, I can just be myself and it's okay."
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It was actually an uncle for me as well.
Mm.
It was my uncle Charlie,
Mhm.
and he was a bachelor, and when I went to go visit him, he had, no preconceived notion of what a kid was or what you were supposed to do with a kid.
Right, right.
And so he let me flip through his Grateful Dead records. I
Mhm.
played with the lizards. There
Yep.
was a farm next door. There were kittens, and I just
Right.
got to run around. And those are some of my fondest memories.
Yeah. Yeah, and, as a coach, you can be that person. You could be, Charlie. Did you say
Yeah.
Charlie? Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. And so and just circling back around to the muscle that we need to build is is that fear monster that says, "Oh no, we shouldn't let a little girl flip through Grateful Dead records, play with lizards and run around a farm by herself. Something bad could happen," right?
Mhm, mhm.
Instead, it was leaning into freedom and saying, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Right.
This is a contained environment. Um, all right. So, keeping on with that trend, one of the things that coaching is truly all about is being and showing up as real and authentic.
Yeah. I mean, it begins there because that's the only
Mhm.
way you build trust. And teenagers can smell inauthentic or fakeness. I think more than anyone. I work with teenagers for like 5 years. They'll call you out on your bullshit, and if you are being not you, you don't get any traction. You don't get buy-in.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you alluded to this earlier, but what folks usually do and what the tell is and what the behavior that we're trying to correct is with coaching is when folks hide behind a perceived or real position of power and
Mm.
bring in that pseudo self and that posturing that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I think that is not sustainable because eventually, um, you will be called out. Eventually, you will fall on your face. Eventually, you will realize that you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
No one does.
So no one does. And so, let's talk about how we build this muscle from a coaching perspective. And it's again allowing for our own and for others' autonomy, but it's a little bit more nuanced. So, in our one of our previous podcasts, we talked about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Hmm.
Intrinsic motivation is what comes from inside of you. It's attached to your natural value set. Extrinsic motivation is the list of shoulds that the outside world imposes. And what ends up happening is that when we allow ourselves and others to pull from those internal value systems that flow authentically from us, we'll just naturally align with people that share our values and everything goes better. When we try to force things based on outside approval or fakeness, that's when we get into trouble because it's really hard to sustain. Everything feels icky, and oftentimes the people who are in the positions of power or perceive themselves and to be in the positions of power don't like the way that it feels either. Did you ever have anybody in your life, from a coaching perspective, who just really let you kind of be you based on shared values?
Yeah, I would say you could feel it the most in friendships.
Mm.
At least for me, I've been in friendships where they were possessive, um, very judgmental. If I bought the wrong car, they would criticize. If I wore the wrong shoe, that kind of thing. And then I've also been in friendships where they encourage the spaz in me, the loud Korean kid who was always told to calm down, um, adventure, all of that. So like, uh, it completely affects you in your life, and your quality of life is the friends who are competitive and kind of like push you down, and the other friends that support you and champion your story. It's like day and night.
That's awesome. And you know what I love about our conversation today is that we're really talking about the importance of friendships. I think friendships are one of the different kinds of relationships that don't get enough of the spotlight.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're all I mean, when we think of relationships, we either think of what? Family and intimate
And work.
and work. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so, friendships are the people that ride alongside of us, that light us up. And so much of how we can learn how to show up as coaches can take place in our friendships because it's a really safe territory to try to start exploring and trying on these types of behaviors and to become aware of when you might be reaching out to try to control or hide behind some sort of external validation.
Yeah, and the friends that do hold space naturally, they're just good at it, and they're great listeners, and they champion your story, even if it goes against their own, truth. Um, those are the people that actually turn out to be amazing coaches. Those are the people
Yes.
you're like, oh, you're so close to just being a great coach. Just start getting paid for this.
Yes. Yes. And honestly, that's how most people end up in our program.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've sent many people who they're just really good friends, and I'm like, "You could do more, I'm telling you." And then they explore coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another one that we have to talk about because it's huge is what coaching is allowing for mistakes.
Yeah, this is what makes coaching a human experience and also sustainable. If you think that coaching equals perfect sessions where people have life changing revelations in every session and all of that, you're setting yourself up uh, for failure because it's that pressure is just no one can handle that. No one's God.
No, no one is God. And as coaches, we facilitate the change process. And inherently, in any process of change where you're moving forward, things are going to go backwards from time to time.
Right, right.
There are going to be obstacles. Things are going to go wrong. People are human. They're not going to get it right all of the time. And that data is what allows us to pull it forward into the future in order to do better. We actually need the mistakes in order to grow.
Yeah, and this is why I love calling coaching a craft because when I think of craft, I think of art. I like the word perfectionism. It doesn't penetrate through when you think about like a craft, a discipline, in art. Um, if you think of coaching as kind of like this, yeah, this program or this kind of, if you stay away from it being a craft, then it's easier to um, want to be perfect or want to judge yourself by results.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that punishing for mistakes is part of the culture that many of us were raised with, and that's part of the culture where many of us work, and that's part of the dynamic of many friendships and many relationships, and it's actually incredibly harmful.
Yeah, and also you're going to be the hardest critic on yourself. So when you are punishing for mistakes, it's a dangerous process, and chances are what you think is a mistake maybe it wasn't even to the client. You know?
Very much so.
Yeah,
And this, punishing for mistakes is really where we take coaching out into the world, outside of the one-on-one client relationship, and where we begin to critically evaluate how we show up as parents, as partners, as friends in all of the different spheres of life. Um, when we punish ourselves or others, we get stuck in a shame spiral
yeah,
and nothing can go forward.
yeah, and also it goes from something you're doing to now something you are, and that's what's dangerous, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, of everything that we're talking about, and this is going to be a series, what coaching is and is not, because there's so much good stuff here. Um, I believe that if you are interested in coaching, if you're interested in implementing a coaching culture in your home, your workplace, or in your relationships and your friendships, this is the number one thing you can do to implement it is to stop punishing for mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
So let's talk about what this requires. And it requires conversations
Mhm.
and honesty and transparency and really talking about, okay, what went wrong? What did we think was going to happen? What did happen? And what did we learn so that we can avoid this pitfall the next time?
Yeah, I mean, what I hear you saying is it requires a growth mindset instead of a fixed one.
Yes, 100%. And then also a sidecar of awareness that we live in a puritanical and legalistic society that loves to punish people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so if you have this like little itching, burning desire to do this stuff, it's because that's how you were socialized. It didn't happen overnight. You're not a unicorn. You're a human who lives in a constructed society. And so you're just responding and reacting to the dominant culture. And that's what we're here to change.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you're thinking about this, from a one-on-one session perspective too, sometimes this shows up with our clients. So um, I just had a client who last time we had a session, she said, all right, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend. We planned it all out,
Mhm.
and she didn't do it. She didn't break up with her boyfriend. Now, to be clear, I don't care. I just want my client to be happy. It is her life.
Mm.
And, I really like this is nothing to do with me. I'm a conduit. I'm a facilitator for her goals. But because of this punishing, getting in trouble mindset, she was so spun out before our session that she was texting me, I just want you to know I didn't break up with him and
Right,
all of the
right.
reasons why. And I was like, oh God, you think you're going to get in trouble.
Trouble, yeah. She thinks she's going to the principal's office.
hmm Yeah. Exactly. And, life is hard enough. And one of the things that we can all benefit from is the understanding that natural consequences are a thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to impose consequences on anyone. You just make life harder that way. Natural consequences suck enough.
Yeah, this also happens in fitness coaching where if you don't, if you end up doing a cheat meal or you don't lose the pounds that you guys planned on or you missed a workout, you're afraid to to face your personal trainer because you don't want to disappoint him or her, and also you feel that you have failed and now you're punishing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great way to sniff out potentially abusive relationships on any front is somebody who takes a punishing stance.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point.
Yeah. So our last one, which is really important, is one of the big things that coaching is making constructive use of differences.
Mm,
What does that
yeah, I was trying to think that's abstract.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think a great way to kind of illustrate this is, differences exist in so many different spheres. When I was when this concept really crystallized for me, it was reading a book on leadership and taking a look at what folks across history who have been really great leaders do well.
Mhm.
And what they do is they listen to as many different perspectives from smart people as they can find on a single topic, and they want to hear all of the different
Mm.
perspectives in order to determine for themselves what might be the best or maybe a combination of different perspectives.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
This reminds me of I wrote a blog post once, and I'm going to use it in my new book, and it's called "Finding Beauty in the Contrast." And
Ooh.
it reminds me of this. It's in relationships, and I'm guilty of this. Um, Seeing differences as negative and bad, and there's the gap, and that means we shouldn't be together because we're so different. And I've learned over the years that you got to focus on seeing beauty in the differences. And even even globally, like if everyone made an effort to find beauty in the contrast, whether it's our skin color or gender or wherever, like the world just would be so much kinder.
Oh, absolutely. And, interestingly, when we look at one of the factors that enables us to attach to post traumatic growth, it's exactly as you described, being able to look at difference and feel that I'm part of humanity as a whole and that
Yeah,
everyone's different and how beautiful, versus if someone's different than me, then there's necessarily going to be conflict.
right. It makes me think about someone who's narrow and someone who's wide. And so
Yes.
if you're a coach who is lined with judgment and you don't have the ability to make constructive use of differences, if you don't have the ability to find beauty in the contrast, then you're narrow. You're not going to be as potent or as impactful as you could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's bring this way down to the street level and to the human level, because we all have a natural instinct to squash conflict.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
true. Nobody likes it
Yeah.
because our pain centers get lit up. And when somebody feels that somebody's presenting an option that's different than what they think and feel, whammo, that the 5 million years of evolutionary conditioning leads us to believe that if somebody's telling me I'm wrong, it might equal death.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, right. Right.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
and that's why that evolutionary trait and those hormones and neuroreceptors are so powerful, is because in the human brain, wrong equals death, right?
Mhm.
So, sometimes that's true, for humans, wrong could equal death 100%, but really in everyday life, when your partner plays "why did you do it that way" game with you, you know,
Mhm. Right, right.
like death is typically not imminent, but nonetheless, "why did you load the dishwasher that way?" All of a sudden, but pain centers get lit up and you have
Yep.
the need to control, to squash conflict. And that's really counterintuitive and counterproductive to a harmonious existence.
Coaches are curious, coaches are not judgmental.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then the other piece of this is that if we allow ourselves to, as you described, find beauty in differences, we can learn so much.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
And
that's what allows us to learn because now we're stretching, we're curious, we're wide, we're not closing doors. You know.
yeah, and so, whether you're at home or at work, approaching conflict from a perspective of, "Ooh, I feel pain here," that's an evolutionary trait that I'm fully capable of overcoming through activating my neocortex. Let me see what I can learn. And again, that's Noelle speak. So, not everybody brain runs that way, but mine does, and it works from time to time.
Yes.
Um, and it's a super valuable muscle to build of being able to recognize that pain point and say, what can I learn here?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Well, listen, if you guys have enjoyed this conversation, we're going to continue. This is going to be a series, so look out for part two as we continue to talk about what coaching is and what coaching is not.
absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you. Be well. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to journey.co/everything to explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a strong community to do it in. We created Journey Coaching to equip you with the tools, training, and community you need to attain your goals.
Join Journey Coaching and begin your journey towards personal freedom and a transformative state of growth today. That's JRNI.co/everything.